we've taken our pattern, we've gone to edit, we've hit define pattern, and it's saved right here to our little pattern menu, okay? I'm gonna go back into my room composite world, and I'm gonna do two things. First, okay, make sure this is the right layer. Yep, okay, so this is my background. What I wanna do is make a copy of just the floor. So you can use whatever tool or means you feel most comfortable to do that. I'm gonna just marquee select it, okay? And I'm going to Apple J. So now, if I turn this off, I can see I've got a copy of just the floor, okay? Your world is now about to be shook. I'm gonna double click on the layer. We get a whole new menu called layer style, okay? There's all these options that allow me to like add things to my layer, right? That you can play with. What we're gonna use predominantly is the pattern overlay. So right now we can see I've got this kind of abstract polka dot that I've created and chosen. That is Kaka's, not great. I'm going to open this and I'm going to find the wood that we defined. Ta-da! Okay, but I'm feeling a little dizzy. That's like, it's a little, the scale is off, okay? And why we like pattern overlay is because it gives you these options to play with the scale, okay? So I can make the planks really big, really small. I can make it like, you know, a parquet. And then I can change the angle of the pattern, okay? So I never want it to just be like straight on, because that's kind of, that's weird. It doesn't look believable. But if I kind of tilt it a bit, right? That gives me a little bit more, it gives me a little bit more believability. And then you can go in further and we can actually change the perspective of the flooring if we want, okay? So every treatment and every texture is going to need its own kind of special treatment, but that's very exciting. Up here on our blend mode, again, we can throw it in normal, and that's going to be like the solid pattern just as is. If I play with the blending modes, we can use the flooring that exists beneath it to indicate like the shadow, or if there's like variation in where the lighting is falling on the floor, we can maintain that just by using different blend modes. Again, it's all about experimenting. So multiply is very popular. Linear burn, that's a very kind of harsh one. Overlay is often popular, depending on what you're using. Again, if you're doing like a lot of light stonework and stuff, overlay can be really pretty. But again, it's more about just play with it, see which one looks real and believable to you. I'm kind of old faithful to multiply, and then I just sort of changed the opacity, right? It's funny, this one I don't love as multiply. I'm gonna keep it as, I think I'm gonna keep it as darken actually. Okay, so that's cool. And then again, you can like tweak the angle. So maybe in the room, this one, they would probably lay, how would they lay the chevron like that? Probably like that. Okay. So this is strange, right? This doesn't look believable, but we're getting there. This is where I can then take my transform tool, make sure I'm on the right layer, And this is where I can play with the perspective again. And as long as you stay within your, it should, is it gonna do that for me? Oh, hang on. Hold please. We have to commit it first, okay? We're gonna rasterize the layer. Then we can transform it and the pattern will shift with us. Okay, so now I can make it a little bit more believable. Play with this perspective, and I can just like zoom out to see, right? Boop, boop. Yeah. So that feels believable to me. Okay? They're very big planks, right? So these are the steps that you would take to change a texture using a seamless pattern that you've downloaded. Okay? So now let's bring something in that we can apply our own custom pattern to, that maybe we've designed ourselves or we've downloaded but then tweaked to like make it our own, whether it's changing a colorway or any number of good things. Okay, so I have this little bird pattern. I've got some stripes, I got some squiggles, lots of stuff to work with. Okay, so let's bring in a new element. And you actually, like I said, I'm going to have a lot of these resources available to you that you can download yourself and use the working files that I have, or you can use your own. It really just depends on if you have like a vision for the end, what that's going to look like. Okay, so let's bring some curtains into the mix. And I'm going to use this stock curtains image, and we'll just open it in Photoshop. So this is where I really want you guys to pay attention. I know it's a lot, and I know a lot of this is like, until you're working on it, it's going to feel overwhelming. But this is kind of like the crux of the assignment, okay? It's applying your pattern to fabric and to upholstery, but still having it look believable, okay? And a lot of things, something that might like separate something looking amateur versus professional is if you've paid attention to the lighting, okay? And when I mean the lighting, I mean, are the shadows in the right spot where they're supposed to be, right? Does the fabric look like it would look in a room with the sun coming in, okay? And a lot of that is just a matter of like learning how to reproduce these shadows digitally, okay? And we can enhance them in a couple ways, or we can just like duplicate them as is. So, as always, let's see if I've redone it. Okay, so I've already got these curtains masked out. So let's save some time. And I can actually copy and I can paste them in. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to get your file in, whether it's place embedded, place linked, or copy and paste from your own Photoshop file. We will notice that there's no window here, which feels a little off and awkward, but we're not going to worry about that right now because this isn't a lesson on windows. Okay, so we're going to just sort of put this here. And as we know from our staging, or sorry, our space planning. It's all about scale, right? And does something feel like it's proportional and a right, space in the room? Okay, so these curtains, they probably would just kiss the floor. This is a little bit more of a pooling, but that's fine. Okay, I don't see the top, so I'm not going to stress. Okay, so we're going to just pretend there's a window off in this corner. Here's a curtain. Okay, so much like our upholstery, same concept. We're just going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to bring it to the very top. There we go. And I'm going to actually make a copy of this layer. So I'm going to Apple J. Great. And I'm actually going to make a second copy. And you'll find out why in a minute. Okay? So let's just work with this one, and we'll call this pattern fabric. Okay. Oops. Fabric. Okay. And then I'm going to call this one shadows. Okay. So we'll leave them in that order for now because that's just what we're working with. So much like our flooring, I'm going to double click. Oops. Wrong layer. And I'm going to do a pattern overlay. So right now we have our herringbone wood, so that's crazy. That looks nuts. I can do my triangle, I can do stripe, I can do my swirlies. That could be kind of fun. Let's just play. Let's just see what it looks like, okay? I'm going to just put it on normal for now. Okay? And we can see, like, it's completely opaque. Well, it's 85% opaque, right? If I bring it all the way up, this is like a solid brick. If I get an assignment with fabric that looks like this, that's not a successful accomplishment, okay? Because what I'm seeing is a rectangle with a pattern, okay? So this, we haven't achieved the task. To make this feel believable, there's going to be some tweaking we need to do, okay? I only point it out because I've gotten this in the past, and it's just that one extra little step that's going to make it feel believable. So we can play with the scale. Let's bring the scale. I can make it really small, or I can make it kind of, let's make it like abstract. Okay. Sure. Done. Easy. Okay. Now, this next step, like I said, is going to make or break whether I believe this is curtains or just a patterned filled box. I'm going to take my shadows layer. I'm going to drag it on top of the pattern. We don't see the pattern fabric anymore. That's because we haven't changed the blending mode of this layer. So if I go to multiply, now I have my pleats are more visible. Okay, then I can go in here and I can start to play with the opacity, right? I can play with the blending mode. I can go color dodge, hard light, right? Maybe this is going to be more believable if I do maybe a hard light. Not so much. Right? Linear burn looks good. Okay. And it's a little hard to tell because this is a black and white pattern on a white fabric. So whatever fabric color that you're applying it to is going to influence what this looks like. So some of them might be harder to work with than others. I'll show you a better example of something that's not with a custom pattern, and something that is a little bit more subtle that you might use in your designs. That would be like, you know, more like textures and stuff like that. So let's see. If I go into, these are textures, pattern 2. Right? Some of them are so hard to tell, like even what they are. But like, okay, so here's an example of like a woven pattern, okay? Not the most beautiful pattern, but an example to show you of like a textile, okay? So if I make it really big, I'm gonna start to see like that repeating pattern. So this would be something that would be like just really tiny if you wanted to show like a woven texture. If you just needed to add like a little something something, you could do something like this, okay? And then you could take it one step further. You could color it with your adjustment layer. Excuse me. How rude. Let's see if this will let us. It may not because the pattern's already, yeah. There we go. Okay, so I could do something in this world if I've chosen that I want to put my custom pattern on something else, like a pillow or the upholstery on the couch, right? Just because you make a custom pattern doesn't mean you have to put it on everything in the room. I just want to see it applied to something in the room, whether that's like an upholstered something in the room, okay? Whether that's the couch, the curtains, a pillow, etc. Okay, so let's keep with our palette. I think I want it like really subtle. Not my finest work, but you get the point. Oops. Okay, and again, you play. If I needed to play with the, if I wanted like these shadows to show up better, I could go into my levels adjustment and I could, you know, use the sliders, right? Bring the shadows down or bring the shadows up, bring the highlights down, right? Play with the contrast. And there we go. Okay, so if I turn the shadows layer off, not great, right? We see a little bit of the original underneath, right? But it's not great. So you want to make sure that you always give yourself like more to work with. If you're like, it's not showing up, it's not working for me, just try creating a duplicate of that layer and then work with it that way. Okay? The last thing I will show you to work with your upholstery is, let's say, instead of applying my pattern to the curtain, I do want to put my pattern on the upholstery. This is a little bit more of an advanced technique, okay? But it's only advanced because it's just using like your 3D brain a little bit more. So if you're like if you're a sewer, or if you've ever worked with stuff that's like 2D that you've made into 3D, pottery, or you know, some of your space planning classes where I know you do like the modeling and stuff, taking something 2D and making it 3D, it's all about thinking of like the edges and the faces of the object, right? So if I break down this couch, let me bring the couch to the forefront. Okay, I'm gonna bring this all the way to the front. I'm gonna turn these other layers off so that we don't get influenced. Okay, so I've got my couch. I'm gonna make a copy, and if I look at this, I can break this down into, okay, I've got this panel of fabric, right? That's facing me like vertically. Then I have this face of fabric, right, at the top. Then I've got this face, and if I really wanted to get crazy, I've also got this front face here. So a good kind of indicator is like, where are the seams, okay, of the upholstery. This one is more challenging than it needs to be because we're working within a regular sofa, okay? A nice square or rectangular sofa is going to be so much easier to work with because the faces are all like a cube, right? They're very easy to visualize. But we'll work with this because I'm a glutton for punishment, okay? So first things first, I'm actually going to rasterize this layer, right? Because right now we're a smart object. I'm going to rasterize it, so that means I'm able to change and select stuff within the image and it be non-destructive, okay? I am going to select, how's it gonna let me select? Let's use the quick selection and see how we do. So I'm gonna do just this top panel. It really doesn't want me to do that. Let's try something else. Let's see what the wand does. Will the wand let me? Nope. And this is what I mean by, like, sometimes you just need to experiment on like what does the Photoshop want you to use? Sometimes it will tell you, and sometimes you just have to guess. Okay, so I'm gonna just paint in where I want it selected. And right now I'm just working with the top panel of fabric. Again, there are a lot of ways to do this. Just use the method that serves you best. You could use the polygonal lasso tool, would actually be really good. Where's my opposite? There we go. I know it's painful, guys. You're doing so good. Okay, this is good enough for rock and roll. And let's select. Okay, so I've got this top panel. What I'm going to do, I'm going to Control J. So now I have just the top panel. Okay? You're going to do that for all 3 panels, or however many panels of fabric that you need that might be like facing a different direction, right? It's more about like, does the fabric look like it's going the right way on the object, okay? Then we're going to do exactly what we did last time, and we'll call this top panel. We are going to pattern overlay. Let's pick something of our own design. This bird image is kind of crazy, but could be neat, right? And I can adjust how I think it should look, right? And like, you could get really crazy and then like go in and warp the perspective of this surface. That's like way too much, okay? So I do not expect your perspective on this method to be perfect. That's a very advanced technique, and like, we're just working on like getting our selections and our color changes right here, right? But this could be very convincing, okay? And if I can play with the blend mode, right? Well, that's kind of neat, right? You can do an overlay. You can color dodge it. Oh yeah, here's like something so 70s, and we could just like, boop, bring it down, right? May not be like the best. Might be like kind of grandma's basement, but like, you know, have fun with it, play with it. I'm going to just see what it looks like normal, okay? And again, it doesn't have to be like so opaque. If you play with the shadows, right, this is going to allow you to have those, if you play with the opacity, it's going to allow your shadows to reappear, okay? So what I really probably should do is, again, like I did with the curtains, have a copy of that top panel. I'm going to remove that effect. How do I do that again? Oh yeah, I can clear the layer style. Okay. So we've got this one underneath. I can bring this one, and now I can either color dodge it, screen it, multiply it, whatever we need to do to get that shadow to be believable, right? And again, like, you're gonna just play. Maybe it's something in this world where it's just a normal blend mode, but then it's overlaid. You would continue to repeat this for each surface. And then you have fabric on your object that's of a design that you made that looks real, right? And again, it's really just about where are the shadows, okay? We could take this one step further, and just for fun, because we are here for a good time, not a long time, okay? I'm going to group that couch together because it's, you know, that's the upholstery. So I could just call this fabric on couch, right? And I'm sure a lot of you noticed in your mosaic assignment, like, I like named layers because then I can find them in your document. Because in a room like this, you're going to have like 40 layers. If I can go in and I can see like what are the names of things, you're going to feel more organized, and then it's easier to see like where were you going with this task, okay? So I've got this couch. I can do a couple things. I can take my paintbrush, or I can take a tool called the burn tool, which is the dodge and burn tool, okay? And what I would need to do is have, I would need to have a new layer, and it can be either blank or a copy of your background. So let's just do a copy of this one, our floor, and we'll just call this shadows. We'll call it actually, sorry, floor shadows. Okay. This burn tool, I won't get too much into the technical, but it's an old darkroom technique where you would use a piece of cardboard with a hole in it when you're like in the darkroom and it like developing film, and you would try and make certain areas darker in a picture by exposing it to more light, but then blocking out the rest. Okay, so with this burn tool, I could actually go in and I could just add a soft little shadow under this couch just by painting it in. Okay. And you can play with the exposure. You can play with, is it exposing midtones? Is it shadows, or is it the highlights? Again, shadows. It's going to amplify like the dark areas, right? We've got lots of dark here, so I can make them really dark. Or I can expose for the highlights, and this will really take those down. Okay, so again, play with your exposure. We're looking for, you know, some indication of realism here, of like, oh yeah, does it look like it's floating in a room or not? Okay, and again, this would also apply. Oh yeah, I forgot we had this floor. So I can just do this, and I can color dodge, overlay maybe. You know, you get the point. You play with your blending modes, find the one that looks the most believable, right? And if I find like, oh, it's put too much of this like second layer, we can just layer mask it out, right? We love our layer masks. So I can go on here. I can boop, make it giant, give myself a big fluffy brush, boom, boom. Paint in my layer mask. Boom. So let's look at our tiger. Let's look at our curtains. Boom. Okay? So, like I said, I know it's a lot. I don't expect perfection, but I do expect you to try. And I do expect you to look at the tool tutorials within Photoshop, because a lot of this is basic. It's all in there. It feels like it's a lot because I'm throwing it all to you in a 2-hour class, right? I will post what I've recorded today so that you can follow along. And then I will find some supplementary tutorials for you, whether they're my own or from Adobe or whatever, that I think are of value to you guys. And we'll have time to work on it next week. Okay? So, if you have any questions, come see me. But that is it for today. Yes, Eugenie. Yes, I will post those now because you guys are closer to your presentations. So it's, you know, I didn't want you to have to switch context, you know, too much. But yeah, we'll see you next week. We are downstairs in the lab for next week. We might come up here for the rest of the class, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there, okay? Thank you guys.